Hello and welcome. I am Scrapperlock, and this is City of Heroes. We are with uh, our Storm Sentinel, Doctor Cyclone. We have 42,000 XP, which is about half a level to go to get to level 26. And I think I said last episode would get us new slots. No, the slots are on the odd numbers. We're getting a new power at level 26, and we're on the Uberman story arc. For your information, this was given right after the failed mission. I walked out, I let the timer go, I just logged out. When I logged back in, the mission failed. Talked to him, and he gave me the Uberman. So if you get stuck in a mission like that from a contact that's not a story arc mission, and you just let it cancel, sometimes you can just get a story arc. If it's a story arc mission, you're going to have to finish it. All right, so we're going to Talos Island, and as we go, we're going to talk today, finally, about the 7 deadly sins of game mastering. This is from Edariad, who has a pretty good channel about gaming and D&D and role-playing games and stuff like that. Before we do that, I just want to post a quick update. Two things about my WotC anti-WotC rant in last episode, Wizards of the Coast, WOTC. People call it WotC for short. Um, One is that, as somebody pointed out, a lot of the evil, parasitic, predatory practices that I was complaining about regarding D&D did occur because Hasbro bought Wizards of the Coast, and Hasbro is a giant Borg machine that just wants to assimilate everything, and that is true. However, I'm pretty sure Wizards of the Coast with Magic the Gathering, some of the crap they were doing with those booster packs that started me down the road of disliking them happened before they were acquired. I don't remember exactly when they were acquired by Hasbro, so I feel like Hasbro may have like ramped it up to 11, but they were already doing some of that crap. Um, so they just amped it up. The second thing is, as in a fit of irony, there was an article in one of the gaming magazines today, and it was picked up by one of the video channels I watch. I won't name here because it's a little controversial. I like the channel, but I don't want to get political. But they were talking about how D&D, they're trying to turn D&D into a live service game, like a video game, right? You know how you'll be there's whatever the game is, like Call of Duty or something, and they put out updates and expansions a few times a year. And I don't know if Call of Duty does this, but games like that, you can buy a what they call a season pass. I think Paradox used to do this for some of their games too. And a season pass allows you to basically get all of the updates for, say, the year without having to purchase them individually. It's supposed to be a deal, right? You give them $69.99 for the year. They put out three $35 expansions. It saves you some money. Um, and so apparently D&D is doing that, something like that, where you get a season pass, or they're going to, where you get a season pass, and then you'll get access to some of the content that they're putting out on D&D Beyond. Of course, they want everybody in there and create a walled garden and all of that. It's like literally the day after I posted my anti-Wizards of the Coast rant about why I don't like them, they did exactly the kind of thing that I don't like again, right? So just one more reason for me not to give them any money. So that's just two quick updates, and now we're going to get on to the 7 deadly sins of game mastering. And the first sin is solution worship. By the way, you can tell that I'm pretty confident with this character at this point since I'm typing crap while fighting. I think we need to up the difficulty for this guy. Yellows are no real problem. Should we put it on +1 and try it? I feel like the problem here with +1. Let me back up. I feel like the problem with +1 right now is, well, we got the accuracies. I just don't know if we do enough damage. It's probably going to really be very tedious. Well, the yellows are okay. I think that, again, as always, the problem isn't going to be the yellows. It's going to be the oranges. But I feel like this guy has the ability to do that. I'm not sold on him going up, on us going up to mission, like 2 individual missions, like in other words, a mission for a team of 2. I don't have enough AoE yet. When we get Chain Lightning, we might. So I'll have to think about it, guys. I have to think about how I want to do it. But we definitely need to raise the difficulty level if I feel completely comfortable in typing stuff while I'm fighting yellows. Anyway, solution worship. What this means is that as a game master, you fall in love with the story you've written. You decide how you think the challenge should be solved, and you don't want the players to solve it any other way, right? Which can lead to railroads. So didn't I come up here and look for guys and see nobody up here? I thought, oh, they're behind the column, and there's a hostage. So just today, my Deadlands group, they had gotten into a fight in an alleyway with some of the bad guys in the Royal Court, and the Royal Court escaped. They teleported away, and so these guys were like hanging around the hotel, trying to see if they were going to go after the senator. And they did a little bit of floundering around, and one of the players said, "How many days is it until this cruise started?" It's almost a week. She said, "Can we do something to speed this along, like maybe just do a dramatic task?" And I said, "You know what? That is an excellent idea." It was right before our 5-minute break. I said, "You guys take the 5-minute break. I'll think about how to do the dramatic task." It wasn't hard to do. And then we just ran a dramatic task. Guys, this was the funniest dramatic task we've ever had. So the first thing that happened was, before they did the dramatic task, they had one of the daggers of the ace of clubs who had thrown knives at them. So they had a couple of her knives. And I said, "You notice that there's a club engraved on it." I was hoping they would pick up on, okay, the knife has a club on it. Jack's spade is a spade. You know, are they going to realize it's the 4 suits? They didn't. But so my best friend got the idea, well, let me do object reading. So he did a deal with the devil, and he cast this spell, and he got a crit fail. As a huckster, that means he got backfire. And we rolled on the backfire table, and I said, "You got really lucky." Because once again, the 2 times he said backfire, I'm so annoyed. He's gotten just stunned. And since he hasn't been in combat, it really doesn't matter, right? I mean, roleplay-wise, they roleplayed that he was stunned and fell over, and everybody was like, "What happened?" And then he got yelled at by the other characters for taking the unnecessary risk of doing the object reading, because she didn't tell them. The character, her name's Kara, didn't tell them she was going to do that. And so it was the second time she tried to do something like that and passed out. And so everybody was laughing at the crit fail, and it was a fun time, actually. But then we started the dramatic task, and what they were like watching the hotel where Senator Blaine was staying and that sort of thing. And so what my best friend decided to do was, I'm going to do a notice roll. I'm going to stay outside and just kind of stake it out and watch the entry ways and just see if any of these bad guys go in there. And I said, okay, make a notice roll, and he crit failed it. So what I said was, this isn't necessarily the exact rules of the way Savage Worlds runs it, but the way I run a multi-person dramatic task is, by the rules, if you, let me see if I can actually look this up. By the rules, if you get a club, it's a complication. You have +2 or -2 to your roll. And then if you fail, the whole task fails if you have a club and you fail, right? Let me see if I can find this. So just hang on, guys. Let me pause. I'll find it, and I'll give you the exact rule. I had it bookmarked. Didn't look at the bookmark. Okay, so a dramatic task. If you get a club, something has gone wrong. Attempts to resolve the task are made at an additional -2 if the roll is failed during complication. The dramatic task fails, the bomb explodes, etc. The character may choose. So it doesn't really say if anything that happens with a crit fail. So I'm not sure. So support doesn't fail the task, but if you're doing the task, which all of them were, then the task fails. So he got a complication. He used a Benny to redraw so that he didn't have a club, and then he crit failed. And my rule is, and I've seen Jordan Caves Callerman do this in a group dramatic task. If you crit fail, you're out of it doesn't fail the task. That's only on a complication, but you're out of it. Like you can't participate in the rest of the mission, in the rest of the task, which wouldn't matter if you're at the end, right? But this was the first round, so he crit failed. So what I said was, okay, you're hanging around there for a couple of hours, and the marshal comes by and arrests you for like spying on people. Like the bellhop notices and calls the marshal and complains about it. So they take you down to the station for questioning, and I said you're not going to go to jail or anything, but you're going to be wasting all this time down at the station instead of doing what you were trying to do and spying on, whoever was potentially going to sneak in and kidnap Senator Blaine, because that's what they think is going to happen. So he crit failed out. And then the other guys did it. They needed 15 successes in 3 rounds, which is already a pretty tough task. That's more than 1 success each. And they only had like 3 successes at the end of the first round. So now they're going to need to get 12 in 2 rounds. With only 3 players left, they're going to each need 2 successes. And the ranger goes, and she's going to use her ranger badge, and she got a joker, so it's +2. So she's +3 to her persuade roll. This is going to be great. So she went to, I can't remember who she was persuading. She crit failed. So she got out. So she was knocked out. So what I said is, she was trying to find information on the guys who were part of the royal court, and I said one of them, you don't even see it, but he heard you asking around about him, and he sneaks up behind you and just clocks you on the back of the head, knocks you out, and drags you into an alley, and you're out for the task. Everybody was laughing. And so the other 2 players had to do it, and the blessed, who's actually it's kind of appropriate, it was the blessed player is the one who suggested doing the dramatic task, which, by the way, again, was a great idea. She rolled like 4 successes. She rolled like a 17 and then a 22. So she got like 9 successes all by herself and managed to succeed at the dramatic task. And so I thought, okay, what's going to happen? Well, part of what she had done was befriend the senator, and he was telling her where he was going, and he told her he was going to the theater that night. And I decided, okay, we can have a fight in a theater. We had the fight next session because we were getting close to the end of the session. So I knew we wouldn't do it then, and it would give me time to make a theater map. But yeah, they ended up at the theater, and they saw people running out and screaming and yelling and saying there was an attack going on, and the senator was being attacked. So they succeeded at the task. I was just going to have him get kidnapped from his hotel. But because we did a dramatic task and they asked certain questions and the role play went a certain way, we did something different. And so this is the point, is because I wasn't married to a particular solution, when a player made a cool suggestion and crit fails happened and successes happened, we just went with what happened. And it's a way better and funnier story and much more entertaining story with all those crit fails and the wild, crazy 4 and 5 successes and raises and everything. Successes, like the swinginess of like 2 of them crit failing out of the task, and one of them basically crit successing to succeed at the task, with the 4th player just sort of getting 1 success each round. It's just absolutely hilarious. It was fun. You couldn't have predicted that. It's not at all the solution I expected us to come up with. Who cares? It was fun, right? And that's the point. Don't worship a pre-written solution. I think that one of the reasons this often happens, and the Edariad did not mention this, is that a lot of players use pre-written adventures, and the pre-written adventures from the companies that publish adventures are pretty rigid, and they have 1 or 2 solutions, and if you don't follow those 1 or 2 solutions, the GM isn't going to know what to do, right? And depending on how experienced the GM is, you might end up kind of deer in the headlights going, I don't know what to do here, because they're not doing either of the solutions the book told me about. So yeah, the fix to this, I think, is don't run pre-written stories. Instead, what you should do is create situations, which is kind of what I did, right? There's a senator, you think he's going to be kidnapped, you don't know when, what are you going to do? Sometime before the 23rd, because that's when the ship leaves the dock or something. What are you going to do? And they came up with a bunch of ideas. And then one of them was like, It's kind of boring to go hour by hour through the day. Can we do? And I kept trying to move. Do you guys want to do anything else? Can we move forward? And they were like, oh, can I do this? Oh, can I do that? And this is one of the problems with my group is they're very smart and they come up with a lot of good ideas, and then it takes us hours and hours to churn through all the possibilities. I got to find a way to move it along faster, and I should probably do dramatic tasks a lot more because they're super fun, especially when players crit fail. So don't write a story with a conclusion. Write a situation. Remember champions, what they said you're going to create for the adventures, they called them scenarios. Right? The scenario is there's an explosion, you hear an explosion on the street, and the atomic monster breaks out of the lab. What do you do? Right? Don't predetermine how they're going to defeat the atomic monster, etc., or whether they're going to even fight it. What am I here for? I was going to sell to the other nurse. Oh, no, I came to this. Okay. Because I sold to the other nurse. All right, so Laura Bernetti. And then, oh, I think we have to talk to her because we need to get Scrolla Tieleku. But let's do Ullman. Scrolla Tieleku, we have to level 29 to do that. So, but we do need to get that. Yeah, so don't write stories. Write scenarios, situations, and then let the player decide how to deal with it. Don't copy City of Heroes, right? City of Heroes is a great game, but it's a computer game, and it's not meant to give situations. They have a pre-written story arc. We already know what's going to happen with Uberman because it's a pre-written story. Don't do that. That doesn't make COH bad. But the whole reason to play a tabletop game instead of a computer game is because the GM has that flexibility. So as a GM, build the flexibility into your game. Make scenarios, not stories. And just a situation that's a jumping off point for your players and see where it goes. I've quoted this before, but in one of the, I think, third season episode, maybe the start third season episode of the Deadlands game that Jordan Caves Calaman ran, so the Wildcards Deadlands on the Saving Throw channel, it's probably still up on YouTube. They opened the session with Dom, the character of the gunslinger, and the GM said, it's night and you're on top of a moving train. Why are you here? And Dom said, I'm here looking for the bear. Or something like that, who was one of the servants of his enemy, who was Baron Simone LaCroix, the owner of the Bayou Vermilion Rail. Okay, so Callerman then ran the session that way, and then he said, okay, to his wife Megan, why are you here? Right. So he had the guy looked into the room and he saw Megan in the room, Megan's character Rosaline in the room with some other people, and he said, why are you here? And she said, well, I heard about the bear possibly being on this train, and so I, like, her character was a lady of the evening, and she said she kind of like flirted her way onto the train, and she's made nicey nice with some of the bad guys who work with the bear, and so he ran that. And then he said to the other guys, why are you on the train? And they said, well, the train has got a bunch of boxers on it, and they're going to a boxing tournament, and the one guy's a boxer and the other guy's posing as his manager. So one guy's pretending to be a boxer, the other guy's pretending to be the manager. And so the GM just made up all these other boxers on the spot and everything. Now, I don't know that I could have made as much cool stuff up on the spot as Jordan did, but the point is he started with a situation. Right? You're on a train, on a moving train at night. Why would you be here? And can let the players contribute even more to that initial situation than you would, say, in Champions when the bank is being robbed, right? Because that would be, there's an alarm going off. What's an alarm to? And you say alarm to a bank robbery, right? You don't have to necessarily give the players that much flexibility, but give them a situation, let them start, and see where the role play takes you, because it'll often take you really cool places. The second deadly sin of GMing is perfection paralysis. The old enemy, the enemy of perfection is the enemy of good. One of the things he said, and this definitely used to be me, and sometimes still is, you don't trust your ability to improvise. and therefore you over prepare and over prepare and over prepare. And what this has the effect of doing is kind of destroying the spontaneity of the game for you. It destroys your enjoyment and enthusiasm for the game. It takes all this time to prepare, and that kind of like beats the fun out of it for a lot of GMs, right? Doesn't really beat the fun out of it for me. I like a lot of the prep, but if you feel like you're getting stressed out by the fact that you are trying to make everything perfect and you're over preparing, you can try to just provide, again, the sketch, the outline, and then let yourself make stuff up as you go, the way Jordan Callerman did with the train robbery thing, right? Again, it depends on how good you are at improvising. My problem with Foundry is I like to have maps. My players like to have maps. I don't tend to do theater of the mind battles. I'm not good at it. So, so depending on that kind of thing, you might need to do some additional prep. But what he argued, again, the scenario idea, prep situations and just see what happens. So for his suggestion was prepare things like that the Merchants Guild is trying to unseat the mayor. And then when the players are interacting with people in the town, they'll hear about it. Right? And that's kind of what I did with the kidnapping of the senator, right? I prepped the situation, which was that these guys want to kidnap the senator and their plan is to do it on a certain night. And then the players could, after hearing about the situation, they kind of drove who they've been talking to, what they've been doing. The battle on the city street that we had last session, at the beginning of this session, was entirely provoked by them going out trying to stir up the hornet's nest and get attention from these bad guys, right? And I wasn't planning to do that. But because my players did, I'm like, okay, they should get something out of this because it's not a bad plan. So then I had them, I had the villains actually get drawn out into the spotlight or whatever, the way the players were trying to do, right? They lured them out, right? They were trying to lure the bad guys, so I let them do it, right? Then they were trying to stake out the senator so the bad guys couldn't kidnap him. They solved the dramatic task. They succeeded at skills checks and stuff despite all the crit fails, so I let them do it, right? So if you prep situations, that makes it easier on yourself. But again, if you feel like you want to have 3D dioramas or maps or something, you do kind of have to prepare that. And the other solution to that is have a lot of generic maps. Easier to do for some settings than other because some settings have a lot of maps available and some, like the Weird West, don't. The third thing he said was, and this is kind of an odd one, but he said emotional distancing. So what he means by this is you don't react emotionally to the player characters and what they're doing. You feel like you have to keep a poker face and be a neutral GM, and so your own excitement for what's going on doesn't really come out. And also the NPCs sometimes don't seem to be, to the players, to be angry or excited or frightful or whatever. And so if everyone just seems to kind of generically be there but not emotionally invested in the outcome, then the players won't be emotionally invested in the outcome either. Now for this one, I don't really know. I mean, a lot of times my players and I just use third-person summary. I'm going to stake out and see if anybody shows up. Well, nobody showed up, kind of thing, just to summarize what's happening. And so maybe that leads to an emotional distancing. I'm not really sure. A lot of groups use this more third-person types of description. But what he argued is that when possible, you should expose the emotion of the NPC. At least one emotion for each NPC. Have them be angry or grumpy or frustrated or in love or whatever, so that the players feel a more emotional connection to the characters, to the NPCs, and therefore their characters. So I don't know about this one because I don't feel like my players and I do that a lot, but I do feel like they are emotionally connected to their characters. So I don't know. Your mileage may vary, but that's the third one that he put into his list. I'm going to finish this up and then we'll do the fourth one. Let's just get this guy done. Last hostage. And so the next, the fourth deadly sin. Whoops. Fourth deadly sin is apocalypse fatigue. So this is where every adventure, every scenario, every circumstance, every villain fight is saving the world. The world's going to be destroyed if you don't do this, and then if you do it and save the world, then the world's going to be endangered again, and then again, and then again. And he said this often happens when you start the threat too high of a level, right? If your first level adventure is saving the entire world, where do you go from here? Well, now you're saving this plane. Then you're saving the multiverse. Then you're saving the omni-multiverse, right? Like, it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. So he said it's not going to be exciting. Like, after a while, you're just bored with world-threatening events. And if you, at third level, save the world, you can't, at fourth level, save a butcher shop, right? So he said start with small stakes and try to keep the stakes as small as possible. Start with fighting the rats in the basement of the inn or saving a butcher shop or whatever. And don't get to the cosmic stuff until their 15th level or something, right? Because that then gives you room at the top. And it's sort of like how in the old days when they were judging figure skating, and I used to get frustrated at this, somebody would do an obviously great skate program, but it was the first contestant. And so they'd give them like a 5 out of 6 and everything. And the reason they did that was they needed to leave room at the top. If they gave this person a 6 and then people came on and did better, right, then there's no room to give them a better score. So they would start this guy at 5, and then if nobody's better, then 5 is just the winning score, right? But if better people come along, then they give them higher scores. And same thing with your D&D adventures. Oh wow, we don't have any orange, so I can't make space there. I guess I will make space with my vault. We'll just do that and take them all, and that leaves space. There we go. So yeah, you need to kind of quote unquote leave room at the top. Make sure that the early adventures are smaller stakes, and and I would say very slowly escalate those stakes. Don't jump the stakes up too fast, because if you jump them up too fast, then you're not going to have anywhere to go, right? If you're saving the multiverse at level 6, then what are you doing at level 8? Okay, so don't have everything be the end of the world. After a while, the players just, you're immune to it, right? So you get habituated to it, and it just doesn't do anything for you. It's sort of like when you tune out a sound, or you tune out a smell, or you tune out something. Like, you see it all the time, and after a while, you just don't notice it anymore. I mean, I remember one time, so I bought a Toyota Camry in, I think it was 09, and in around like late 2010, I'd had the car for like over a year. I didn't smell the new car smell anymore, but a couple of colleagues, three of my colleagues got in my car and we were going to lunch, and one of them, whose name was Stephanie, she said, "Wow, is this a new car?" And I was like, "No, why?" And she said, there's still a new car smell." I said, "There is?" And she said, "Yeah, can't you smell?" Like, no, because I was used to it, right? It didn't have as strong a new car smell, but she could still detect it. And when my house was built, I remember coming in and you could smell like the fresh wood and everything. And I said, "Wow, I can kind of smell the wood and the paint and everything." And my realtor said, "You know how there's a new car smell? There's a new house smell." And I smelled it when I first moved in, and then it went away, quote unquote. And then the first time I left for Thanksgiving, I think, and I bought the house in June. I came back after Thanksgiving. I was spending a week with my mom, and I smelled the new house smell again, right? So I got habituated. Similarly, if it's apocalypse after apocalypse after apocalypse, they're going to get habituated, and they're not going to detect it anymore, right? They're just not going to notice it anymore. It's just, oh, saving the world from apocalypses is what we do. It's just a day. It's just a day at work, right? It's just a day in the office. Oh, I forgot to. I keep forgetting to set the missions to +1. Well, I guess we're not going to do that this episode because we're talking about um, apocalypse fatigue and GMing sins. So we'll worry about that in the next episode. So that is kind of stakes monotony, right? But then the fifth one he said was victory monotony. And I definitely did this in Champions, where victory is had the same way every time, usually combat. You have to fight your way to a win every time. The solution to every problem is to have a battle. I remember the good Rob, as good as he was, making a statement that I completely agreed with when he said it when we were in like 10th grade, 9th grade, early on in Champions, but I don't agree with now. His quote, and I can quote it, a scenario is just a reason to have battle, right? The premise was that the whole reason you're playing Champions is to have super fights with the heroes and villains, and a scenario is just a reason for them to fight. And yeah, we had a guy named Andy who would have been perfectly happy if I just set up combat scenarios, like the scenarios of Advanced Squad Leader or something. If I just set up a combat scenario every session and we just had a fight, right? Instead of like don't waste time on all this story and role playing and everything. What we really came here to do was to have a battle. And so if you end up where every single adventure, every single scenario in Champions is solved by straight up bare knuckle combat, that gets really boring, right? It ends up kind of being its own sort of railroad. So the way to fix this is have situations that can be solved in multiple ways other than just combat. And whether it's puzzles or whether it's just that the villains are willing to negotiate, right? Every single fight does not have to be to the death or to unconsciousness. I remember in Champions, we'd be fighting, and let's say there's 5 heroes against 5 villains. And one hero has been knocked out, and 4 of the villains have been knocked out, and the last villain, who's facing 4 heroes by himself, has like 3 stun left. And he keeps fighting. Well, then what's going to happen? The heroes are going to keep fighting too. You could instead have the villain say, okay, I surrender. Or have him try to flee. Right? And now it becomes a chase instead of a combat. Right? Or a negotiation. I remember very early in Champions, one of the probably the first scenario we did, there were these thugs who were trying to kidnap people in the park or something. Or there was thugs who had robbed the bank and they were trying to get away, and I chased them into the park. And my best friend who was running it, I think it was the first Champion session we ever had. I remember we were playing the Fabulous Four. His characters were Black Cat. I can't remember the second one. Adamantium Man, maybe. And I was playing Starlight and Marauder. Marauder was a martial arts crossbow guy. Starlight, why I called her Starlight, I don't know, was Lightning. And Black Cat was a martial artist. We didn't have a very balanced team. And Adamantium Man was like Iron Man. And so I think it was something like that. Or maybe his name was Steel, because my best friend did have a guy named Steel who was basically Steel Man instead of Iron Man. Right? Yeah, we weren't super original. Fabulous Four instead of Fantastic Four. Yeah, we copied the comics. That's what kids do. We were in 7th, 8th grade. But yeah, I chased the villain. So we beat most of the villains, and the one bad guy who had a machine gun, like an AK-47, ran into the park, and so I chased him into the park, and my best friend said the guy had he had grabbed a woman and he had his gun aimed at her, and he was threatening her as a hostage. He held her hostage. He held her at gunpoint and said, "Okay, I'm going to shoot her if you guys don't back off." Right, and it turned into a negotiation, and he was really nervous, and we were trying to figure out. And so I had Black Cat, who had stealth. She was trying to like sneak up behind him while the other characters were negotiating with him. And it was this really cool. It took us like an hour to get through this thing. It was super cool. One of the first things we ever did in Champions. So that time we played, he had an alternate solution. But I don't know why we forgot about this lesson, because it was super fun. A lot of times there was no alternative solution. The villains just fought to the death or to unconsciousness. They never ran away. There was no morale or anything like that in Champions. You could roll ego or something. That was up to the GM. But yeah, we didn't do morale checks. We like even in D&D, we didn't do morale checks. We just fought to the death. Heck, in Keep on the Borderlands, the Caves of Chaos, many of the monster caves have like not only guard rooms and treasure rooms and the chieftain's room, but they have living quarters and stuff. Common rooms. We didn't know what a common room was. But these common rooms had young and females, like that were just mates, orcs and goblins and baby orcs and goblins. We just went in there and slaughtered everybody. Basically, they're goblins. We killed them all. We're like, why not do it? That's what you gain experience points for killing monsters. So we just went in and killed everything, right? So that's solution monotony or victory monotony, right? There's only one way to win, and it's having combat. And yeah, that gets boring. Just like everything being an apocalypse gets boring. Sorry, guys, a bit of a yawn attack there. It's not only 9 o'clock. I don't know why I'm yawning so much. I didn't want to yawn in your ears, so I just muted for a sec. So that's the fifth one. The sixth deadly sin. Right, so the solution, obviously, to the fifth one is provide scenarios that have things other than combat that you could do to solve it. This next one, mystery hoarding. So he talked here about you have some sort of a mystery that players want to solve, but you don't give them enough information to solve it, and you keep holding back that information because you don't want them to solve it, because that'll quote-unquote be the end of the mystery. And he said don't hoard the reveals, right? Go ahead and use them and then provide more. Each solution should lead to another mystery. Now, that sounds great. I'm going to say that's very hard to do. Right? Having stacked a mystery upon a mystery upon a mystery upon a mystery is not an easy thing to do. And so I would argue that although that sounds like a great solution, I'm not convinced that it's necessarily workable for all game masters. It depends on how good you are at writing mysteries, right? If you only have one good mystery, I can understand why people would hoard it. But yeah, you don't want to draw it out too much, because eventually the players are going to lose interest in that mystery. So you have to find a balance between letting them solve one mystery and then coming up with another one. Mysteries are great. They do keep people coming back. They do keep people curious. But you have to be careful if you use them, if you make it take too long before the solution is apparent to the players, then you could end up with the players kind of getting bored with it. It's sort of like when you watch these TV shows that are kind of like soap opera type TV shows where there's some kind of a mystery in the TV show and they keep dragging out, drawing it out. Yeah, after a while you just stop watching because you don't care anymore. The other thing I would say is be careful about having one mystery inside another mystery inside another mystery kind of thing, because I've seen this happen on TV shows and gotten ticked. So a great example of this is the TV show Castle, which is, we were right there. I could have talked to him inside. The TV show Castle, where at the very beginning of the series they establish that so Castle is a writer, a fictional writer of murder mysteries, who gets involved in a mystery where somebody is copying his books in the very first episode, and the cop who catches the case is a woman named Kate Beckett, who's a brilliant detective who's really good at the weird cases. She's also a fan of Castle because she likes the weird cases, and that's what he writes in his mysteries. And so after he helps her solve the case, and at the end of the first episode, the premise of the show is he asks the mayor of the town if he can follow her around to do research. And then he finds real satisfaction out of helping solve actual cases. Yes, it does inspire him to do stories, but it's very clear after a couple of seasons that he kind of likes helping the cops. He's not a police officer, but he feels kind of like one, and he likes bringing criminals to justice. Real criminals instead of just doing it fictionally. Okay? So in the very first episode, they establish that Kate Beckett, the police officer, is a cop, in part because her mother was murdered and the mystery was never solved. Okay. And so you don't know who killed her mother. Nobody does. And for much of the first season, it's just left like, okay, her mother was killed. We don't know why, because she doesn't tell anybody. But then she does talk about how her mother was killed in what was ruled a random wayward event. She was just in the wrong place at the wrong time, got stabbed and killed. Okay? And so then Castle decides he wants to look into the case. And she tells him to leave it alone, and that if you dig into my mother's case, we're done. But he digs into it anyway, thinking it'll help her if he can help her solve it. So, like, I can help you solve it. And she says no. She says, she lost herself in this case, and she almost didn't come back. And she said, I can't look into it. Just the same reason an alcoholic doesn't take one drink, right? That she'll get sucked back into it, and it consumed her life, and she just had to, for her own sanity, put it away. So she says, if you look into this case, we're done. I guess spoiler alert for the TV show Castle here, guys. But in any case, Castle does look into it. He finds out some suspicious circumstances, and the medical examiner friend of his that he asked to look into the case, he believes that it was deliberate murder and not a random wayward event. So now they have new information, right? We've gotten unraveled a little bit of the mystery that there's somebody killed her on purpose. And in the third season of Castle, you find out who the guy was who killed her, but not why, because she has to shoot him because he's trying to kill Castle before she could find out who hired him. So she finds out somebody hired him to kill her mother, but she doesn't know why. So now we've gone from a random mugger killed her mother to a person went after her mother and killed her on purpose and tried to make it look like a random attack, to someone paid this guy to do it. So now it's not just murder, it's an assassination. A specific assassination for someone. Now, Beckett's mother was a lawyer, and she mostly worked on hard luck cases. So now they have to tell us, okay, so something about one of the cases that she worked on must have caused her to be murdered, right? And so every time they find something, it goes deeper. So then you find out that, so now another guy shows up as she continues to investigate the murder and tries to kill her because she got too close to finding out who the person was who ordered the hit, right? So there's Thunderhead. Let's make sure we sweep this room. I forgot we were getting Thunderhead here. So Anyway, you find out that somebody ordered a hit, and then somebody ordered him to order the hit, and it goes on and on and on for all these seasons. And I remember saying to this friend of mine, both of us liked Castle but hated this storyline. It's the gift that kept on giving, right? They just they were like a dog with a bone, and they just would not let it go. They would not solve the murder completely. In fact, I stopped watching Castle. The murderer, the guy who ordered the hit, ended up being a senator who was trying to become president. Had a record that would have made him impossible to be able to run. Made it impossible for him to run as president. He might have had to resign his Senate seat because he was doing illegal stuff. And Beckett was going to find that out, and so then he tried to have her killed, and so on. And her mother found out. This is what the whole thing was about. But then apparently in the 8th season, which I did not watch because season 7 was horrible, you found out that the senator got murdered because somebody else was even bigger and was behind him. And it became this thing like from a woman was murdered in an alley by a mugger to the whole world could fall and nations will crumble if your mother's murder is actually solved, so you need to walk away, kind of thing, right? This woman is a lawyer in New York. She has no special international anything. Why would the entire world collapse and stock markets crash and wars start if somebody finds out who murdered her? But they kept making it, this is kind of like the apocalypse thing, but they kept making it bigger and bigger, and there kept being more and more mystery inside mystery. As a viewer, I found that frustrating. I wanted the story to go away. Just end already. Just finish. Right? I don't need to keep seeing this same story over and over again. So I worry, for this type of advice, if you leave mystery within mystery within mystery, you could end up aggravating your players the way the Castle show aggravated me, and you don't want to do that. Now, I stopped watching. You don't want your players to say, can you please stop with this mystery? We're sick of it. It's the gift that keeps on giving. So that's the reason I brought all of that up. Now, I can't really easily draw aggro on these guys. But the knockdowns and knockbacks should help a lot. So if you're wondering why they're coming up so fast, so the way this is tuned, I believe, because I think I exploited this as a tanker when I wasn't doing huge amounts of damage. The way this is tuned is that the next spawn comes in when the first guy is taken out of the previous spawn. So if you want to make it take a little longer between spawns, you should alternate between bad guys so that you don't take any one of them out until they're all almost to a sliver. The risk of doing that is that they could kill Thunderhead because he does not have a lot of hit points. Anyway, that's mystery hoarding. So what I would say is do what you can not to drag it out, but be careful having mysteries with each solution lead to another mystery, because if there's no closure, the players could get frustrated. I remember my friend Dave, he always said he liked closure. I remember, like, at the end of a TV show, if the series ending gave you good closure, he liked it. And I can't remember which of my big adventures I did. It might have been the one where his character, he was going to college after the first year, and I might have done something with his hunted and solved it. I can't remember what happened in the one scenario, and he said to me afterwards, I love that scenario. And do you know why? And I said, why? And he said, because it had good closure. Like, it was closure. He liked closure. So if you have a player that likes closure and you keep making one mystery lead to another, that's not closure, and they could get frustrated. We're going to do one more mission here, guys, because we got one more thing to do. Actually, let's just do this, because they're already at 40-something minutes. This is going to take a while. We'll do the mission. Competing with the players. That's the last deadly sin of GMing. And what he says by this is if the players try to bypass a section of your dungeon and you try to force them to go through it anyway, that's kind of like competing with the players. They came up with a solution. that you didn't. They did something that you wouldn't have done or didn't want them to do. Instead of ordering them not to do it, making it so that the dungeon doesn't allow them to do it, celebrate it, give them a reward, give them bonus XP. Now, what I would say is be careful with this one, because sometimes some of the players want to bypass the content that you created and some of them don't, right? So Matt Colville told a story about how there was, let's do this here, right? Imagine we're in a dungeon and this is a bridge over a chasm. Okay, the way his dungeon was set up, if I remember the description correctly. And on this bridge is an avalanche that has blocked the way through. All these rocks piled to the ceiling. The only other way through is to go all the way through the map of the dungeon, through all the guard rooms and everything else, and come out over here. Okay? And what his players did, they stood over here, and they're like, well, we don't want to go all the way around. We have a potion of gaseous form. Can our guy just gaseous form, one of our guys gaseous form through all the cracks? And Matt said, well, one of you can. And they were like, okay, but whatever's on us turns gaseous with us. And I guess that's the way the gaseous form potion worked in that edition of D&D. I don't know if it still does. And so they said, yeah. He said, yeah, everything that's on you comes with you. Does that include our portable hole? He said, well, technically, yeah. And they were like, okay, we're going to lay the portable hole down on the floor. We're going to get all 5 of the other guys to climb into it. They only have like an hour of breathable air in there, but that's okay. We're just going to go across the other side. I'm going to wait till the gaseous form wears off, 10 minutes or whatever, open up the portable hole, let them out. And so they literally like teleported themselves across the chasm in a very long way, the equivalent of teleporting themselves across the chasm and bypassing the entire thing that he had created. Right? Now, he allowed it. But here's the thing. Not every one of the players necessarily wanted to do that. And one of the players was very concerned and argued against it, saying we're going to miss all of the adventure and all of the XP and all of the treasure that we could have had. And his concern was Matt built the encounters on the other side of that bridge assuming that we were going to have all of the magic items and experience that we got in the taking the long way. If we don't take the long way and we don't get any of that stuff, then we're going to be under-leveled and under-geared for the ending encounter, right? And in fact, I think they were, and they had a lot of trouble with it. So you had some players who wanted to bypass it, and other players who didn't. So as a GM, you have to be careful. You have to protect the players, all the players, not just the ones who want to bypass your stuff, right? Additionally, you have to ask yourself, and I would ask the players, why are you bypassing the dungeon? This is Dungeons and Dragons. Presumably, you're playing this game to adventure in dungeons. Why are you bypassing the dungeon? Players do this all the time. They bypass content. I don't understand why. I don't. Am I bypassing the content in here? No, I'm going all around the room making sure I caught everybody. I'm not bypassing it. The only time I complete missions is the street hunts because I hate those, right? Or if I have a bug. But I don't auto-complete this sort of thing. So this brings me in mind of a story. I've told this before. I think it was WebDM who told this story. I can't remember. It might have been the Dungeon Dudes. I can't remember who told the story. Right? There was a group of players who had, like most D&D groups, never gotten like above 10, never gotten into the double digits. And they said to their GM, "Hey GM, we never get to level 20. Can you make us up a level 20 adventure so we can experience being level 20?" GM said, "Sure." I've never run a 20th level dungeon. That'll be cool. So he creates like a 5-level deep dungeon. I've told this story before, so you may have heard it. He creates a 5-level deep dungeon, progressively more difficult traps, tricks, and monsters, designed to wear at the party, so that by the time they get to the 5th level, which is where the boss is, who has whatever item they're supposed to get and return to the town, they've been worn down to about 50% hit points and 50% spell slots, so they still have some resources, but not full resources, and it's going to be a challenging encounter. That's the plan. What he didn't realize was exactly what level 20 players can do in a game like D&D. And so they went to the top of the dungeon. They used scrying to see the boss. I guess the spell lets you do that. They teleported. Now they could see him. They teleported down. So they only used 2 spells, scrying and teleport. They teleported down to the boss, full 100% hit points and all their spell slots except those 2. Wiped the boss, teleported back to the surface, went to the town and collected the reward. They were done in 20 minutes. Half an hour. So this whole 5-level dungeon, you didn't play it. You skipped it. So now I have a problem with that. Because as players, you asked me to create a level 20 dungeon for you. I went to the effort of creating the level 20 dungeon and you bypassed it? Why did you bypass it? I think this requires some out-of-character conversation, in fact. That when the players are clearly expressing the desire to invoke a plan that is obviously going to bypass content, major amounts of content, I think as a GM, I would, out of character, stop and say, hey guys, let's talk for a second here. You asked me to make this level 20 dungeon because you wanted to experience the level 20 game. I made the dungeon and you bypassed it. Why? Don't you want to experience the level 20 game? Isn't that what you asked me to do? Why are you bypassing the thing you asked me to do? Doesn't make any sense, right? So I would talk to them. And my recommendation is if they're... I'm not talking about in-character decisions that are obviously in character. But if the players are clearly trying to dodge the content that you've created, especially if they're dodging it after they requested you make the material, I think as a GM you should stop the game and out of character and say, guys, let's talk for a sec. I know we're here to play the game and we want to keep role-playing and doing the adventure, but let's hold on a sec. You guys asked me to make a level 20 dungeon for you, and I made this 5-level dungeon for level 20. How come you're skipping it all and you just teleported down to the end? Don't, like, we start playing at 8. It's not even 9 o'clock yet, and the adventure's over. Like, we're done. You're going to sit here, should we just break out the Uno cards and play Uno for the rest of the night? How is that playing a level 20 dungeon? Why did you bypass it? Right? And not only would I do it at the end, when they did scrying and teleport, I would stop it and say, hold on, guys. Do you actually want to do this? Right? And this reminds me of Gary Gygax, who said, basically, given the chance, players will absolutely break the game, and then they'll be sad that they broke it. Right? And I have a friend who does this. He will do everything he can to break the game, and then when the GM allows him to break it, he's sad that he broke it. Fortunately, he's not in my game group. But, like, that's ridiculous. Why are you breaking your own toy? Why would you do that? Like, if anybody knows why players do this, enlighten me, because I don't know. But I would absolutely stop them and say, guys, why are you doing this? Right? I didn't have to ask my players why they were doing this stuff, like surveillance and stuff with the hotel where Senator Blaine was, because I knew what they were doing. They were trying to stop him from being kidnapped and possibly assassinated. Right? He's a politician. He's running for president. They're trying to protect a presidential candidate like Secret Service, as if they were Secret Service. Like, that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. But if they had said, you know what, they asked me to do this high-level heroic legendary rank Savage Worlds campaign, and so I give them the opening thing where this evil chaos is out, and this Native American shaman who understands what's going on better than everybody else in the Weird West, explain to them what's going on, and kind of recruits them, right, to fight chaos. And imagine if they said, nah, we don't feel like it. I'd say, guys, you asked me to make up a legendary campaign. This is the legendary campaign I made up. Why are you saying no? Now, maybe they would say, this isn't the one we wanted. We didn't want to fight chaos. Like, I don't know. Right? But Like, they didn't do that. As soon as they found out that this was the option, right, they were all in. Let's do it. This sounds cool, right? But you shouldn't be asking the GM to create content for you and then skipping the content. That occurs for specific stuff like doing high level stuff, but even just doing dungeons. Like, imagine you're playing the Keep on the Borderlands, right? And the Keep on the Borderlands, the Keep itself is just a small town, kind of surrounded by a wall, in the middle of nowhere, and a few miles from it, you got to do some hex crawling to get there. Are the Caves of Chaos, and where are all the other villains here? And the Caves of Chaos have a bunch of monsters in them. And the only reason to go to the Caves of Chaos is because there's a bunch of monsters in them. And you can go get treasure, right? Remember what I said years ago, or not years ago, episodes ago, about your character needs to have a reason to go on adventure, right? So the GM tells you, you're in this town, and there's an adventure site off over there. What do you guys want to do? And they say, we don't want to go to the adventure site. Again, I'm going to stop the session and go, why? Like, don't you guys want to play D&D? That's what this whole adventure is, going there and fighting bad guys. Like, why don't you want to do the adventure that we're in? Right? To say I don't want to play in an adventure when the whole purpose of D&D is to play in adventures, I don't get that one. I'll never understand those level 20 characters. Although I could totally see my party doing it. And I will tell you that as a GM I would allow it. And if it meant that we stopped after an hour and didn't have anything to play, I would be like, well, that's just desserts, right? They did that to themselves. But if I were a player in that game, I would be griping. I would be like, guys, I don't want to do this. I want to actually play level 20 D&D. Isn't that what we agreed to? Why are you trying to teleport and bypass it? So, although I agree, you shouldn't necessarily prohibit mechanically in game, like, oh, the walls are sealed against teleport, and it doesn't work, just hand wave, right? That's what he means by GMs competing with the players. Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily hand wave it in character, but I would stop, and out of character I would ask them, why are you doing this? This is the adventure we decided to play. Why are you not playing it? Why are you trying to bypass it? Okay, what did I miss? Oh, there might be a guy up here, but you would expect a red triangle. I feel like it was weird that there was nobody over here. Is this another incompletable mission? I have gotten this bug a bunch lately. Not, you guys haven't seen all of them, but I've gotten this bug a few times where I just had to like give up and log out. The problem is that this is a story arc mission, so we can't just give up and log out. There's nobody there. And they should appear as red triangles now. I'm going to go downstairs and look. And see if there's any red triangles downstairs or upstairs or whatever. Oh, yep. We missed somebody. Didn't I fly all the way around this room? How did I miss this guy? Wasn't I up here? I fought up here. Did he just respawn? Was he hiding behind a column or something? Weird. So yeah, I would say don't prevent the players from bypassing content just because you don't want them to outsmart you, but don't let them bypass playing the game, right? And actually Luke Hart talked about that. He said one of the things he doesn't like about 5th edition D&D, and particularly high level 5th edition D&D, is that there are so many powers, abilities, and stuff that when the players invoke them, it allows them to skip playing the game. And that's what these level 20 guys did. Scrying, teleport, we skip the game. Go downstairs, kill the guy, grab the key, go up, give it to the mayor, we're done. It's 8:45. What are we going to do with the rest of the night? We're here from 8 to midnight normally. What are we going to do for the next 3 hours? Why are you skipping the game? If anybody knows why players like to skip the game, tell me, because I don't understand it. I mean, you see it in City of Heroes too, like the guy who that I like, one of my favorite whipping boys, right? The guy who got to level 40 by just farming hazard zones, didn't play a single mission, didn't see a single non-hazard zone after Atlas Park, right? Played zero of the game content except street sweeping in the hazard zones, and none of them were missions. He just went in there and did it without, because you didn't get mission bonuses back then, so there was no reason to do a street hunt mission. You could just go street hunt, right? He skipped 95% of the game and got to level 40 and was like, yay, cheer. Like, okay, at least in an MMO, I could see somebody having a race mentality. I'm the first person to ever reach max level in COH, I guess. But in a tabletop game, you're not going to out-level anybody because the GM's going to make you all level at the same time, probably. Right? They didn't do that in first edition because it cost different amounts of XP to level up, and they did that on purpose. But in 5th edition, everybody levels up the same way at the same time with some kind of a milestone or a story-based leveling, right? Most of the time. So the party's getting an even amount of experience for everybody unless something unusual happens. So convincing the group to bypass all of that dungeon in gaseous form through the bridge not only didn't it make you level faster, it lost you experience and treasure. Why are you doing that? Why are we skipping content? I will say this about my best friend. He doesn't skip content. When he and I play together, like we would play Divinity Original Sin 1 and 2, we played Neverwinter Nights together. That guy climbs through every pixel of every map. He is obsessively a completionist. He 100%'s the game, right? And so he doesn't bypass content. And if the party seems to be doing stuff that's going to bypass content, sometimes he will go out of character and say, you know, guys, we do know there's a dungeon down here. Are you sure you don't want to do it? Right? And sometimes then they'll talk to me and say, well, do you really want us to do this dungeon? Oftentimes, I don't care. If you want to do it, do it. If you don't. Don't worry about it. Like, they know I prepared a bunch of stuff. And I ask yourself, is it courteous as a player? You know I spent, if it's a big dungeon, maybe hours designing this dungeon. And I put an avalanche on the bridge to prevent you from bypassing the dungeon, and you found a way with a potion to bypass it anyway. Is it polite to make all of that work a waste of your game master's time? I would say no. Right? Just like if I bought the Keep on the Borderlands and I tell you the adventure is going to the Caves of Chaos, and you say, nah, let's go somewhere else. Let's cross the continent in a boat on the ocean. We don't want to do this. Well, I spent money on the Keep on the Borderlands. Shouldn't you do the adventure that I prepared and bought? Same thing with Village of Hamlet. They didn't even give you a reason to go to the moat house, which is the dungeon. They've got the village all fleshed out. They've got the moat house all fleshed out. And all you find out in the village as players is it's there. Why didn't Gary Gygax give you any reason to go there? Because he assumed that any group of players worth their salt, when they find out there's an adventure site next to the town, are going to go there. Because why wouldn't you? That's the adventure. And you, as a player, regardless of what the characters think, you know that. Right? So I feel like, as a matter of courtesy, you should not be knowingly and purposely bypassing content. Now, it happens sometimes by accident, or sometimes you have 2 or 3 routes through the content, and a good GM will do that, and I often do. And you can pick the shorter route, and I don't care. I've designed them all. It's fine. Right? I don't mind the players doing stuff that I didn't plan and not doing some of the stuff that I prepared. There's tons of maps I prepared we haven't used in Foundry. It's okay. Right? Like, I accept the fact that if I'm going to prep maps, some percentage of them, probably close to half, I'm not going to use, at least at the moment when I expect it. Maybe I'll use it someday down the road. Maybe never. Right? And like, that's one of the, we talked about the perfectionism, right? Number 2. And we talked about over preparing. Well, That's the cost of over preparing. You may build some maps and some NPCs that don't get used, right? But as a courtesy, if you know that the GM has prepared something, then unless there's a good reason to skip it, I would argue that as a matter of sort of professional gamer courtesy, gamer to gamer, player to GM courtesy, as a matter of courtesy, you ought to go on the adventure you know your GM prepped for you, especially if he prepped it at your request. So I think we'll leave it there, guys. Those are the 7 deadly sins. Let me know what you think about them. And until next time, I am Scrapperlock, and this has been City of Heroes.